Welcome everyone to another Sales Hacker live event. If you have attended before, welcome back. If this is your first time, you are in for a treat. You have chosen an incredible panel to come listen to. Thank you so much for being here. So while people are still rolling in, go down to your chat box. Down at the bottom, go to your chat box, tell us your name, your role, where you're tuning in from. We would love to just keep this super interactive throughout the conversation. So be sure to talk to the other attendees. That's one of the awesome benefits of coming live. And then also drop your questions for the panelists. We'll pull them in as we go. When you drop your questions, be sure to put them in the Q&A box. We don't want them to get lost in the chat, so definitely talk to the other attendees in the chat and put your questions for the panelists in the Q&A box. So today's topic is all about your closing strategy, finishing the year out strong. We're going to talk about purging your pipeline, creative ways to connect with buyers, dealing with end-of-year sales objections, and lots more. It's going to be a lot of fun. So before I kick it over to the panelists for some introductions, we're going to kick this off with a fun poll. So I'm going to launch the poll here. And it is rate your Q4 confidence. So we've got some options there. While we've got to these answers rolling in, let's do some introductions. So let's meet your incredible panelists. Morgan, let's start with you.
Yeah, so Morgan, Director of Sales Execution Evolution at JB Sales. I've been training clients for the past 4 years on how to fill the top of the funnel strategies and prospect the noise, Salesforce, Slack, Google, to name a few. And super excited to be here to talk about this topic because it's very timely across the board. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Gretchen, let's hear from you.
Great. Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Gretchen Keefner, and I lead Bullhorn's North American enterprise business. And so my teams help support the top largest 50 staffing firms in North America, and we help them manage their business and optimize the recruitment lifecycle on our software platform. And for those of you who are not familiar with the staffing industry, staffing firms are just big sales organizations. So my team sells to salespeople, which is a ton of fun. And agreed, very excited to be here. And this is a timely conversation. Sure.
That's awesome. We're so excited to have you. Conor.
Awesome. Yeah, so Conor Cox, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Proposify. We are a proposal software solution that helps sales teams get control and visibility over the close. So we help around 10,000 businesses around the world win more business, close more deals, and look a lot better doing it. So yeah, really excited to talk about this. And it's super timely for sure. So excited to share some tips and tricks.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, all three of you, for being here. Thank you to everyone who's joining live. We've got our poll results in. I'm glad to see, there is some confidence there.
Good.
They're better be from my team.
Don't make Gretchen track down the answers.
Yeah.
We do have access to these answers now. But that is awesome. And, you're in the right place, and we're going to make it super confident by the end of this. So I'm excited. Well, I'm going to kick it over to the panelists now. And I would love to just start by talking through some data points, like about the end of the year. I was surprised to find out that, in December, fewer proposals are sent out, but have a higher closing rate. That was super interesting. So I would love, Conor, would you want to start us off by speaking to some of those data points?
Absolutely. So yeah, as Sam was saying, it's a surprising stat. We do a state of proposals audit every year. So we look at all the documents sent through our system, and we were pretty surprised to find that December's actually got the highest close rate of any month in any industry, across all industries too. It's not just specific to one, but the volume of sales documents that go out during that month are lower than any month during the year. So it's an interesting time to be trying to close. Fewer, hypothetically less competition, higher close rates. So it can be exciting. Some of the things that we've been finding is that, awesome proposals actually do drive up your close rate. It's not just a nice to have, it's a need to have in a lot of ways. So some of the things that we've been seeing is, adding images is a good example, bumps your close rate up by 26%, bringing video in increases that by 31%. And I think someone on the panel that I personally follow and enjoy their video content would be Morgan. So I might kick it over to him to just talk a little bit about, working that in and how he's done it and the teams that he's trained too, because I think there's a lot of nuggets in there.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. That alley-oop, Connor. Don't throw me alley-oops in the session already. I appreciate it.
Mamba mentality behind you. I'm sorry. It's working over here.
Right. I like it. So real quick, I'm actually just super curious. Like, if you all could just put like a 1 in the chat if you've done video with your proposals before. Put a 2 if you have never done this. Like, you don't even know what I'm talking about. You're like, I didn't even know I could even do that. I just want to see where people are at. Like, has anyone actually done this before? So we got Peter, shout out to Peter, but everyone else pretty much is the 2. We got Steve, Justin coming in there. Okay, we got a couple people coming up on the front on the 1s, but mostly people are 2. So this is something that can help you out a lot, especially if you are in your sales cycles right now, and let's say that you can't get the power. They're like, you can't talk to the decision maker, you can't talk to so-and-so, and you're like, I don't really know what to even do. So what you can do is go to your proposal, and you could obviously just send your proposal to the decision maker, but at the same time, they probably don't have time to review it and they don't know who you are. So one of the best things that you could do is talk to your whoever it may be, your champion, influencer, whatever you call them. And that's the person that's going to basically take the video you make and show it to that executive. So an example would be hey, I talked to the champion influencer. They said, hey, I can't get in front of the person. You're going to create a video using whatever platform that you want. There's a lot of them out there. And you're going to do a video screen share of the proposal and provide context around what the proposal is. And the reason that that's important is that, as you all know in here, if you said you were confident or you're not, is you can take that proposal and ultimately know that the proposal is not for the person that you're talking to. It's for the person that you haven't talked to. And so sending over a proposal with just words, probably they don't have a lot of time for that. And, we have Gretchen, we have Conor here. They'll probably be like, no, I don't really have time to just read a random proposal. But if someone were to have a video that was 3 to 5 minutes, it could walk you through what the proposal was, provide context. You could see who that person is. And also you elevate the champion by them bringing something unique to the sales cycle. You will ultimately close more deals because of this. And I've done it myself, and we've had other clients do the same. So having a video providing context around the proposal, 3 to 5 minutes is what you want to aim for. If you go over, that's cool. That just saved everyone time, because guess what? A 5-minute video versus a 30-minute meeting, what are they going to pick? They're going to pick the 5-minute video. Now you don't have to even meet the decision maker if you don't want to. You just close the deal and everyone's happy. So if you haven't done that, this is something I would do immediately as we get to closer to the end of the year.
That's amazing.
Great idea.
I love it. Yeah. And I might even ask another question. I feel like I could turn into an interviewer in this, but I mean, just going through what we just heard from Morgan, I mean, Gretchen, I'd love to kind of understand, we talk about like pipeline and not carrying kind of like dead deals through, like how should sales reps and managers be thinking about pipeline as we go through Q4 and kind of head towards the end of the year?
Yeah. I think now is the time to hard qualify. You got to know what you're really working with, what you really can close before the end of the year. And it depends on what your sales cycle is, right? We were talking amongst a small group where everybody got on, and there are some teams and organizations that have a sales cycle that is 30 days long, in which case you could potentially generate some new leads and close them, in the time we have left before the end of the year. For others, it's longer. And especially if your sales cycle is longer, you've got to ask yourself the hard questions. Do I know who the decision maker is, how the decision will be made? Do you know what the process is? Do you know what it takes to get to signature? Is there legal stuff involved? How is it going to be funded? All of those things are really important. If you know the answers to all of those questions, then you're in a really good spot. And then it's about controlling the process and making sure that you've got commitment and meetings on the schedule to move to the next step. And then, have your target date of when you want to close. and reverse engineer it. And my team uses mutual action plans. We actually share every step with the customer and communicate back and forth on where we're at in the process so that we get, where we need to go on time. And I was thinking about this and looking at the calendar. I feel like we've already gotten to like December 17th because that next week starts to get into holiday week and that's
vacations.
Yep.
100%. I mean, Morgan, I know we talked in some of the prep sessions about not getting emotionally invested or emotionally attached to your pipeline. I feel like that's probably a good point, even to like ask a question here too. Like, how emotionally connected is everyone to their pipeline right now? And if you want to take steps to get, I guess, emotionally detached, like, how do you work through that? Like, what does that look like from your angle?
Yeah. So I think Gretchen could even speak to this, and Connor, you probably do this for your team, because Gretchen just gave the answer, right? She said, hey, you should know by this date, I need to close this deal. You also should know as a rep across the board how long it typically takes you to close the deal. You should know that. And so inside of my own sales cycles and what we coach people on is, let's say, I call them, this is the easiest way to think about it. I call this the Jordan rules. If you've seen the documentary, you know what I'm talking about, right? So basically at the end of the day, like, the Jordan rules basically was like to obviously just annihilate Jordan and like to make sure that he didn't get anywhere. And so the thing is, like, you also need to create your own Jordan rules so the client doesn't just bully you around. And then your sales cycle is 50 days and you're in 300 days and you're talking to Conor and he's like, what's going on? Like, this is like 200. Why is it still this? Why are we still talking about this deal? Right. So the thing is, I called it the Jordan rules. And so as I got to a certain point, right, let's say 50. So I'll just give an example that I looked at. 50 days. All right. It takes me 50 days to typically close a deal. Right. So once it goes over the 50 days, we have built in our CRM, a flag goes up. Cautionary tale. Like, you need to do something about this. Either you need to get more aggressive with your follow-up. You need to go have a follow-up conversation. You need to kill the deal, something. Once you know how long it takes you to typically close a deal and you're not closing the deal in your typical timeline, you need to figure out what's going on. Did you not ask the right questions? Do you not have the right people? Have you not been following up the right way? That's when you have to do your own self-assessment, and it takes away from the emotional attachment of the deal. Because when the flag goes up, it's like, you got to do something about that. And there's certain follow-up emails that you could definitely do to get people back, and we could talk about those techniques and those tactics across the board. But ultimately, you need to know as a rep, okay, it's past 50 days. I should be doing my own due diligence. I shouldn't have my manager telling me that I need to step it up. I should already know that.
That's right on. And I would just pile on top of that. It's really good to have an accountability partner who can be at least third party to it and a little more objective. Since, someone just posted this in the chat. Like, those are right? Those are deals that I earn commission on, and they can help you kind of see past, what you're seeing in the weeds right now.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the things we've seen too, and it's kind of counterintuitive for us, but the average proposal that, we're sending and the companies that your software send gets viewed 2.5 times before it closes. And as soon as you tick over 3.5 times, the close rate drops dramatically. And what that is, one of the helpful kind of ways that we've been looking at it too, is like, put a formula out there, use some numbers. Numbers don't care about your feelings. So that'll help you kind of prioritize the top amount. And then that opens up some of the ways to be creative too. Because if you're working and focused on few opportunities, you've got more time to, go practice voice lessons so you can sing a beautiful song when you send that video with your proposals. Our sales team did some fun stuff last year. We wrote some holiday jingles and threw those into documents too. So I think it's also a fun time of year to try and get a little more creative, because you're probably going to work fewer deals than you do in an average month.
Yeah. Absolutely. I wanted to ask, like, what some of those flags look like that Morgan was talking about. What are some of those signs that you should recognize to say it's time to get rid of this deal or kick it to next year? What should you be looking for?
It's a real good question.
That's a good question.
I think there's a lot of them. I mean, I think it's just about asking straightforward questions, like, how is this going to be signed? And then if the person runs through a long list of folks you've never met before and who don't know the value of the deal, that's definitely a flag, right? I mean, in certain cases, if it's something that you think can close fast, I mean, then employ like a video strategy, like Morgan's talking about. as a part of that. But otherwise, I think that's all it is. It's just asking the right questions to qualify the process. And is the person that says they're the decision maker actually the decision maker? We used to say that if someone says they're the decision maker, they're probably not. So you got to.
Yeah, 100%. You definitely got to do some investigation. I put it this way because it is difficult for people to be direct because they don't want to be rude. And I understand that. And I'm the same way. However, what I've realized that quickly changed my mindset is that you can be direct, but you don't have to be rude, right? We're just trying to get to the facts. We're just trying to figure it out. So one of the things that I would suggest as a question, right, is you want to evade, to Gretchen's point, I like to call them fireside chats. We have all here have had fireside chats where you're talking to someone and you think they're the decision maker, you think they're going to make it happen for you. And on the fourth call, you realize that the whole time this person has not been helping you out at all, right? They haven't really done anything. So you don't want that. So how do you figure out where the deal is going? Here's just a question that anyone can ask is, once you get the timeline, right? Because that's important. You got to get that, right? You got to figure out when they're actually looking to implement the solution. That's one of the questions that I recommend people ask. Hey, when are you looking to implement a solution like this, right? Instead of asking for the timeline, you ask them when they're looking to implement it, right? Because implementation is focused on their priorities, what they're looking to accomplish, whatever that is. So if I know what the timeline is, then my question at the end of the call, my first call, could be, hey, just out of curiosity, what happens if you don't make this decision by November 22nd? That will give you all the answers you need on whether this deal is actually going to happen or not. Because if they're like, yeah, Morgan, you know what? If we don't get this done by November 22nd, I'm not going to have a job. All right, well, this is a green light deal. This is probably going to go through, right? Unless I mess it up. But if they go like, it's kind of, it is what it is, then either I didn't ask the right questions, I don't have the right person, right? Or maybe something else is there that maybe I need to go and maybe figure out that maybe this organization as a whole isn't a fit. Maybe I have the wrong account, right? So these are things that I would tell you to do, but that one question will probably solve a lot of obstacles that people have right now.
That's a great one. You also mentioned implementation, like to ask, going to own this? And what is the plan for implementation? If there's nothing there, if they haven't thought about that after signing the deal, how big is this really on there?
Absolutely. Because it could be, right, an exploration phase. Connor, you may face that where they're just like, oh, hey, we're just exploring.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, we're exploring.
We're exploring.
We got a long expedition plan.
Right. Exactly. They got 10 locations on the map. It's like, exactly. Okay, like, where's this going?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've used a similar idea. Like if even if you put a number out there, like we can run a certain amount of implementations with our professional services team. We've got 5 slots left for this month. Are you guys looking to get into that? Like we've used a similar kind of tactic just to put not time pressure, but to say, hey, if we want to get this deployed, rolled out by this date, we need to have the implementation started by here. So similar kind of work back idea. And we've had plenty of people tell us, okay, that's fine. We'll push it to next quarter, which gives us the chance to focus again on pipeline that's going to close now. And for us too, with the shorter sales cycle, it frees up a little bit of calendar time to take some of those opportunities that can come in mid-quarter and close before the end. So yeah, it's just like hyper focused because right now, this time of year is the easiest for things to like stretch, it feels too, just from watching over the last few years with our team.
Absolutely. I love that question of asking like, when are you looking at implementing this, and being focused on that. Well, something you mentioned, Connor, a bit ago was like purging your pipeline frees you up and gives you more space to be creative. So I would love to shift to like some ways to get creative. How each of you and your teams have connected with buyers as you're getting close to the holidays. Let's see, Connor, do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're a big fan of humor. I think, being on the East Coast of Canada, we love our yucks and our comedy out here. So we see the holiday season as an opportunity to kind of collab with marketing around some more fun stuff. Again, like it's an opportunity to inject a little bit of joy, a little bit of fun into your prospect's day and life. So like I said, we've spun up, themed Christmas landing pages. We've chopped up terrible versions of Christmas carols and kind of like taken our brand spin on them and used like that approach of kind of a little bit more fun, just a little different angle on trying to engage with folks. And we've blasted that through social, sprinkled it in through our email outreach, things like that. And that's been a ton of fun. One of the things we've also done with implementation is we start to pull our CS team into some of those implementation calls as we move towards the end of the year to really pour on some of that love and show people, what the broader team is going to look like that's going to help them get this thing off the ground. And the same idea of engaging multiple stakeholders at your prospect, bringing more people from your company into that deal to help kind of push it across the line and build some momentum has been super helpful for us too. And as soon as you mix CS sales, you always have opportunities for a little fun and a little back and forth as well.
That's
Yeah.
great.
No, that's awesome. No, Gretchen, go ahead.
I was just going to add this one is not as exciting or creative, but a good one this time of year is just asking what extra budget is sitting around, right? Because a lot of firms really do have use it or lose it budget. And if the deal is a pilot or it's something, under a certain threshold, I mean, automatically that might be able to move a lot faster. So ask for that. Doesn't hurt to ask. Would be it.
Absolutely. Morgan, anything to add there?
So on a +1 to what Gretchen said, because it's absolutely correct. A lot of people, they have to use their budget and sometimes they don't know where to use it, right? And so how do you find those people, right? One thing that you could do right now is ask for referrals.
Yes.
Everyone's talking right now, right? They're doing planning, they're talking to their peers, their colleagues, they're in groups, they're in masterminds, whatever they're in. So people are like, oh yeah, I need to spend this budget. Who should I talk to? Right? People talk. So if you were able to start asking for referrals, right? Getting in front of those people you've already done good business with, then you'll get that business from people that they refer you to. And typically that actually leads to normally higher sales volumes. It can even lead to faster sales cycles as well. So don't dismiss asking for referrals right now, because there could be people out there who do need to use their budget. You don't know who they are, but someone you've worked with probably does.
That's a great call.
Great one. The other thing I just thought of is use Thanksgiving. It's earlier. It's
Yep.
like the kickoff to the holiday season. I would not assume that people are totally out the week of Thanksgiving, because I know a lot of people are working right up until Turkey Day on that Thursday. And also, it's just a great time to say thank you and do something authentic and genuine that kind of puts money in the bucket for things you're working on with them over the next several weeks.
Absolutely. I love these ideas. We've got a couple questions in the chat. I think it makes sense to pull them in here. The first question is, what are some ideas for asking for referrals? How do you go about asking for those?
So we use this tool that, I don't think y'all have heard of this one, LinkedIn. It's pretty good. And so when you go to LinkedIn, you can find people's mutual connections. So basically what I would do is, if you have Sales Nav, if you don't, it's fine. Go to every single client that you've worked with. Here's a key: that you've actually done a good service with. Please don't ask for people referrals and it didn't go well, because then that's not gonna be a good look for you. So you just find the people that you've done good business with, right? You've had great conversations with, whatever that may be. You can go to their LinkedIn, and typically most people have their whole entire connection pool open. So you're going to go through and be like, first and foremost, what companies do I want to work with? You go check that in the Sales Nav criteria, and you actually could go through and pick out the people that they're mutually connected with. If that's not there, just look at the job roles that typically you want to talk to, and then look through there. You should be able to find at least 2 to 3 people to talk to. And the referral template, I got it somewhere in front of me, but basically all you're doing is saying, hey, it's been a pleasure working with you this year. Hopefully you have a great holiday, Thanksgiving, whatever you want to say. And then you'll say, quick favor. Quick favor. Do you have connection with these individuals, X, Y, and Z? And the reason I changed that wording is because sometimes they're connected, but do they actually have a real relationship? And then you'll say, would you be open to introducing to me to talk about our services if, right, these people well? And so basically that's how you ask for the referral. Most people don't ask for the referral. So the best thing to do is not overthink it, because a lot of people just don't even do it. Yeah. People will hear this and get excited, and then it won't happen. So be the person that actually does it, because it does not happen that often. And the fact that you're asking, you're already ahead of the game. And so if you follow that framework I just gave, you should be able to get some pretty good responses that eventually turn into meetings.
That's awesome. I would say too, one of the things that's been really helpful for us is, if you're in an AE role, asking your CSM or going to your CS team to try and find some of those people too, like who had an awesome implementation, who just gave us a 5-star on G2. Are there, where are those sources of people that are really feeling the love right now? And really, there's a lot of momentum that we've just built with them. We find one of the best times for us to ask for referrals is right after we get a successful implementation done. Everyone's just been trained. There's a lot of hype. Everyone's just starting to use the platform, and it's been a really positive change for their company, and people seem to be willing at that point to really go after it. So anyone that you closed in Q3 and have onboarded now, they're ripe for a referral, and the CS team often has a really good line of sight into who you should ask.
I love that. It a little bit shifting, but do you have any advice if you're dependent on sales with companies that are waiting on a contract renewals or have projects pushed back due to supply chain delays? Is a question we've got from a attendee.
I think that probably depends on the real scenario, right? I mean, if something is really contingent on that, I mean, that's where the hard qualification comes in, and maybe that's not a real deal right now. I think it's get to what the real impact of that is and how they can overcome that, and then determine whether it stays in or gets moved.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Well, I would love to talk about end of year specific sales objections. So this is a question too for the attendees. If it would be awesome if you go to the chat, like what's one end of year objection that you run up against, and let us know, because we want to focus on those specific objections. And so while we're waiting for some answers, like what are some ways that we can prepare for the objections that are coming or that are already coming, whether it's looking at past objections or like addressing them before they even come up? What are some tips for being prepared, anticipating these objections? And for the attendees, please drop us some objections in the chat.
Pricing, timing, we're all set.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm seeing some of these come through. I think it goes back to something we said earlier, and it's really understanding the opportunity costs, right? And knowing if they don't move forward with what you're proposing, what really happens to that organization? What happens to your champion? What happens to the decision maker? I mean, really, if you have done all of the legwork up front and you've created the right FUD, right? The right fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and you've created the right amount of need with the right people, then you should have your objections, easily handled because you know how to answer each one of them. It's if you haven't done the upfront work that objection handling becomes hard. So I'm not sure I have a silver bullet answer to overcoming those. It's really dependent on the work you've done up until that point.
Yep.
I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
Definitely. Anything to add, Morgan or Connor?
I'm trying to see on a lot of these, I would say, right, as we're probably looking at them, the reason that we're looking at them is like because there's so much context to each one, right? Yeah. Like there's a lot of context on like what's actually happening in that objection. I will say something that can help, and everyone sees this differently, is let's go like in pricing. Let's talk about pricing, right? Pricing comes up, people want discounts, etc. One way that you can really combat that, first of all, don't ever give proactive discounts. That's the first thing I'll say before I go into my point. Please don't do that. That's not going to help you. It diminishes your value, and that's not going to be as helpful. What I will tell you is when you're on this first call, right? Because a lot of this is on the first call. The first call is like the most important call, right? It's where you normally get all the information, normally, right? So one thing that you can ask is understanding what people's decision criteria is and what is the prioritization of the decision criteria. So if someone's like, hey, my decision criteria is like 1, 2, and 3, and let's say pricing's not on there, but your solution covers 1, 2, and 3. That's an easy way to handle that objection now, because you're like, hey, based on our first conversation, you told me your main priorities are 1, 2, and 3. Based on our conversations, we've all agreed that our solution covers that. So help me understand, where is the discount coming into play?
Yeah.
Right? That's not like being rude. That's just what we talked about, right? So discounting doesn't make sense because I just covered all your decision criteria. So this should be a full rate, right? That makes a lot of sense, right? So that's just one way that I would talk about in terms of the pricing. Is that how you can combat pricing is figuring out what the decision criteria is. If you're nailing the decision criteria and you hit those points, discounting, pricing, that's where you can combat that, to be like, pricing wasn't even the decision criteria. You can even mention that, hey, you didn't put this in the decision criteria. So what's the reason that we're bringing this up, right? And you can have those conversations.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add on that pricing because that first call and the prioritized criteria are kind of the go back to that. So make sure you've got that front and center. I mean, we pop it up on most of our calls to make sure that it's not changing as we move through too, because that's one of the things we'll find is as decision makers start to get added to a deal, as it picks up steam, those criteria can shift if you don't continually revisit them. I mean, we'll go to them on implementation. Oh, you've brought some technical folks in now. Let's make sure everyone's on the same page that these are the 3 things we care the most about, and they are in this order. So
yep,
that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. It even addressed one of the questions that we had gotten, which was, if you've given a prospect a date-driven cost incentive and they don't need it, but they come back and still want the discount, how do you handle that? Are there other incentives that you can offer to speed up signing?
That's a very context specific one too. Yeah. I mean, we've done things like, offering like a more premium support tier for the first 3 months to help with, a faster rollout. Like, again, if you have those decision criteria and depending on the product or the service that you're selling, if you know there is something that you can add to your package to sweeten the deal that helps hit one of those key points, that's a great opportunity to kind of bring that in. But again, those things have to be front and center, have to be confirmed time and time again, or that can land pretty flat too. We've seen that certainly on our side.
And that's a great point that Conor's making. And then hopefully everyone's waiting to that point, because one of the biggest things about discounting is when we think about discounting, immediately you think about price. And also it's changing the wording around discounting and still be I'm putting this parentheses, air quotes, discounting for the person. So when you think about discounting, don't say discounting, say, hey, let's get creative, right? Well, let's have some flexibility around this. When you say discount, it just immediately diminishes the entire conversation. Okay. So if someone's like, hey, can you discount this? I could be like, no, however, we can get creative. Mm-hmm. And what that means is what you just said is we can add additional seats. We can add in support, right? We can add in maybe an extra 3 months. Yeah. These things they're not as hard to give away, right? Adding an extra seat is adding an extra 10 seats. Oh, okay. But cutting down the price, that's when the conversation is like, I don't know about that. So you have to start thinking about, okay, they want a discount. Let's change that wording and say, how can we get more creative? How can we get more flexible with this? Then that's when the real conversation starts.
Definitely. It's always better to add. And I think just asking the question why is a really good door opener, and understand why they need the discount. To our earlier points, it wasn't a part of the criteria. Help me understand this. We agreed that the value is here. Why? And sometimes you'll get some really good feedback that'll shape how you can get creative with the rest of the proposal.
Absolutely. Yep.
I love that verbiage, getting creative, calling it something different. One objection that came through in the chat too was internal turnover. Is that one of you would like to speak to, getting internal turnover as an objection?
Interesting. So they've had decision makers in their company turnover, and now we've got less people. And okay, yeah.
But they've been multi-threaded, and they had people leave on the deal.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Justin Woods put this one in here if he wants to give some more context there. That's what it sounds like.
That's probably the answer right there.
Yeah. He's
okay. Cool. Okay. this is. You want to go? You got it, Connor? This.
No. I was going to say, make sure you're multi-threaded first. I think like that's
Yes.
kind of key. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, this has happened to us. It's super common with like onboarding and stuff too. You've got a key stakeholder kind of leave midway through. So I think like documentation is super helpful here too. Like making sure that knowing, again, decision criteria, those still remain true despite this person no longer being a part of the cycle. Like at the end of the day, you're not selling something to the individual, you're selling it to the company that they work for. So that company's needs shouldn't dramatically shift if they lose an employee. They should still need the same solution or still have the same type of problem. So the first thing is to make sure you're multi-threaded, and then also make sure that you're documenting things along the way. And at the beginning of every touch point, or at least that you have something to make sure that this stuff is still key. Because the other thing that can be challenging with that is you lose someone and someone else gets added. They have a different perspective. So going back to, sorry, the comments are distracting. It is a bug on the wall. Yeah. But that's where I would be at with it, is make sure you're multi-threaded and make sure you're documenting so that you can put that in front of the new folks that have to join.
Yes. Yeah. I think being multi-threaded is just so important. That turnover could happen at any time, anywhere.
Yeah. I would just plus. Oh, yeah, the buckhead. That's a fun.
Yeah.
Sorry, that threw me off.
No, it's all good. I think what they said is spot on. I don't have anything to add. I just want to shout out Jessica's comment about following decision makers to the new organization. I think that's just a great comment. Something else that you can do if you're getting that a lot, then follow those people. That could be, I mean, let's say that 3 executives left. That's 3 new companies. That's 3 new deals. So you could think about it that way too.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. In our industry, because Bullhorn only works in the staffing space, our decision makers move from account to account to account to account.
Oh, you're loving it. Like, oh, they switched accounts. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. It goes real well if it's gone well before, you know?
Right.
Yeah. It's usually good.
That's awesome.
I love it. Well, and so this is a bit, it's a bit of a different topic, but do you have some quick like best practices on multi-threading, like what's worked well for you or what's not? That's a question that's come up in the chat.
So I'll give this as I sell to sales leaders, and I think Gretchen and Connor will appreciate this. I want to get your feedback. Or you can tell me it was awful. You know, we'll see what happens. But but this is the way to multi-thread, and this is going to be such a small detail. And some of you are going to be like, "Oh, that seems so easy." But I promise you, and a lot of people I've trained, the stuff that's so simple and easy, not a lot of people do it. So this is all starts with the first call. Notice I always go back to the first call. I always go back to the first call because that's where all this starts. Because if you're facing objections, most likely something happened on the first call. You didn't clarify something. You asked the right question. It happens to all of us. I'm not saying it's like we don't get those. It's just it happens. So the first call, right at the beginning, the upfront contract, whether you like it or not, this is how you're going to get more people on the next call. And I've even done this and I've seen it happen over and over and over again. And I've seen people just get 3, 4, 5 people on the call. So at the beginning of the conversation, before I even ask a question, before I say a word, I say, hey, typically this conversation goes 2 ways. 1, you're interested in what I have to say, and we move forward with the next steps, and we go to the next call, and we schedule that. Typically, I like to have some other people on the call so we can move forward this deal, and so we could get in that process. It looks like, I looked on your company website, it looks like Bob and Sally are going to be those people that we need to talk to next. And the second part of this conversation is you don't like anything I have to say. It's not really that relevant, and it's okay for you to say no. Does that sound fair? Most people, they don't want to be unfair. So guess what they say? That's fair. Now we've agreed. So when I get to the end of the call and you're like, that's interesting. It's like, cool. So the next steps here, typically we get Bob and Sally on the call. Can you please pull up their calendar? Because everyone has access to their colleague's calendar. Don't let them lie to you. Then you can be like, okay, cool. Next Wednesday at 3, Bob, Sally, are y'all good to meet? Awesome. Now I just continuously do that over and over and over again, depending on how big your deal is, right? If you're like enterprise level, that's a lot of people. So, you know how to go about that. But I just keep doing that every single call. Say, hey, we need this person. We need this person. And when I get stopped, that means I didn't do something right. That means they don't have confidence in what I said. So that now I got to figure out, I didn't sell these people. So I got to figure out what I did wrong. And then you just continuously do that process.
That's right. That is so great, Morgan. And a couple things. One, like that, isn't that so much easier than doing a bunch of cold calling around the person, hoping
stressful.
And back to your ask for referrals, right?
Yeah, please so don't do that.
No. And it also sounds like, back to your first call, you're going into that thing so prepared. So you know exactly what you're looking for and that you're going to ask for Bob and Sally at the end of that call.
Exactly. There's no surprises, right? And that's what happens at the end of the call, is that sometimes we're not prepared to end the call.
Yep.
So we're awkward. Like, I guess I should send a follow-up email and I guess I'll talk to you next week.
Maybe.
then you're going to look at your pipeline and realize it's been 100 days over. Like, yeah, then we're going to go back to what we talked about earlier. So yeah, just like, boom, these are the people. Because the key was, right, to Gretchen's point, is that I named the people.
Yep.
And if you're wrong, they're going to tell you you're wrong.
Yep.
You know what, Morgan? Those are the wrong people. These are people we need to talk to. So guess what? You just found out your decision makers without asking for the decision makers.
Yep.
Now we're good to go.
Yeah, and the opposite side of that coin is reaching out to those people and trying to multi-thread without the permission of anyone that was on that first call, because we've certainly seen that go wrong, where you start to scramble. So it's always better to go back to the people that you have in the company to get the sort of warm intro and lead in there, as opposed to just panicking, connecting on LinkedIn and trying to get more people that way, because we've definitely seen that happen, and it's a good way to kick a perfectly good deal back a few stages in your pipeline.
Very good.
I love this strategy to name the people, and if you're wrong, they'll tell you. So that's awesome. We have a specific scenario that I wanted to share with the three of you. And it says, we're in the final stage of an RFP on a B2B sale. Client gets back a couple of times seeking some further information or clarification. Do you have any thoughts on what they could do to possibly help them decide and close the deal successfully?
That's a tough. I guess my question would be, do you have anyone on the inside who's a coach for you? The RFP process can be really tough if there's no direct communication with the prospect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be my main thing, is what Gretchen said. Conor, I don't know if you don't have anything on this. That's like what my main advice was going to be.
Yeah, I would look inside, and I mean, it might be the opportunity, again, without context, it's tough, but looking at like a customer that you have in a similar, that was in a similar situation before, to try and loop in maybe a customer referral or a, hey, we've answered these questions. And we have another customer that actually really cared about all the same things. We've run a successful implementation. They're loving the product now. So bringing them into your sales cycle can sometimes help. Like,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, we've had a few companies that won't take our word for it, won't take, the hundreds of G2 crowd reviews you have. They want to talk to someone and get the nitty gritty from them. So that can't help. But again, with those RFP processes, there's so many pieces in that machine that are all working together that it can be tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Morgan, are you going to add something there?
No, I think they covered it. When it comes to RFP process, I don't have really too much to add. It's not something I've dealt with a lot on my end, so I don't have any more context to add to it. But I think what they said is definitely spot on.
Absolutely. Well, we're getting closer to the end of our time, so I would love, like we talked about, sort of presenting like an action plan, just some strategies, fast tips, things that people can implement right away after this call. So we might bring it back to like proposals, but it's flexible here. Like, so Proposify, has analyzed like millions of sales docs. So I'd love to just talk about like some tips and best practices for sprucing up your proposal, just things like people can do right away after this. Conor, we can start with you.
I mean, this is my shameless plug for us here. So yeah, I'll put a couple stats in, but I would say the first thing I would do is the hard qualification bit. So like, make sure that you're focused on things that actually have legs and can close right now, because if you're going to get creative, you're going to need to dump a little bit of time into them. So that would be first and foremost. Next thing I do is if you don't have video and you don't have images in your proposal, you need to get them in there. And Morgan talked about some great ways to do that, but you've got marketing teams, you've got creative people inside of your company. If you're not, you might have creative friends. I mean, figure out a way to inject some of your personality into that document, and video and imagery is the easiest way to do it. The next thing I would look at is the length of that document. So if this thing is getting moved around and being shared, you don't want something exceptionally long. From the data and analyzing a few million docs, 11 pages is the sweet spot. So any more than that is probably not going to get read. So I'd shorten things down, inject some video, bring your personality into it, and then pay attention to some of those stats that you might have, right? Like this is a point in the year when benchmarks actually are super helpful. If you see deals lagging, if you see red flags starting to pop up in your CRM, you see those triggers going, kick the deal to Q1 and start building your pipeline for next year, because the focus needs to be on things that have legs right now. So those would be sort of like my sort of stats and how we think about it. Like that's what we're actively doing right now, shortening things up, putting more video into it, and really putting the gas down there.
I would say this one additional tip, and most people might be doing this, but it's a very small step. I don't know if you've been to college before, uni, wherever you went, if anyone ever went to teacher hours, or maybe I was the only person.
I was there once in a while, yeah.
Okay, cool. Anybody else? Yes or no? Be like, you can like no in the chat. Like I don't go to teacher hours, but this is an example why I'm mentioning teacher hours. So here's the thing: no one ever went to teacher hours. However, if you ever went, I went there all the time. You could bring your assignment, and they would grade the assignment. They would tell you what to do with the assignment, and then you could use the edits from the teacher and then get A's. That's how I got A's. So that's literally what I did.
Don't share the secret.
Yeah, like, I'm just trying to help people out. I'm trying to help people out. You know, we got some people, we got some kids. They're probably like, want to help the kids out and helping y'all out. So you literally just go to the teacher hours and you're like, hey, I did this assignment. Can you give me some edits? You edit it and you get high grades. So literally, this is like the main thing in college, right? So reason I'm talking about this is that we fail to do that in the sales cycle, though. We create the proposal and then we just send it over, when we could have someone, our champion, influence, whatever, to review our proposal and give us the edits to send to the decision maker.
Yes.
We forget. We just say, oh, we made a proposal. It looks great. Yeah. We're the leading provider. We're incredible. That doesn't matter, right? Context is what matters. So if I can just hop on the phone with the champion, the person, I don't really care who it is, and I say, hey, real quick, I've spent some time into this proposal. Can you just like quickly review this to like make sure that I'm not missing anything? And here's the most important question that you have to ask. And if I need to add anything additionally, that's going to wow this person. You have to say wow, though. You can't just say that they're going to like, because that doesn't matter. You have to say what is going to wow them. Like what's going to wow Gretchen, where she's like, whoa, like I've never seen this before. That's what you want the reaction to be when you're selling your services, your solution, or whatever it may be. So that's what I'll tell you to do, is make sure you're doing teacher hours. Wild example, but use your teacher hours with your champion and influencer. Get them to actually review the proposal before you just send it off and hope everything's well. Because it might not be. You might have missed it completely.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll build on to the teacher hours piece and say, while you're in those teacher hours, which is a great idea, build a mutual action plan together. I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but map out everything that you need to do together in order to get to done deal and implementation, and ask for the same feedback there. It's great.
That's awesome. Teacher hours. I love that.
Connor's already thinking about the training on teaching hours. You see it as
like the wheels are turning. Okay. Yeah.
That's good.
I love it.
I love that. Have the champion review it for you. I love that. And knowing what will wow the decision maker. Well, I would love, this is sort of just like a question for you, the panelists, and also for the attendees, as just some more like rapid fire quick tips. What is your number one end of quarter or like end of year closing strategy? What piece do you think is the most important? And so like if there's anything like we've missed in this conversation, or like any comments, like I'd love to just hear some final thoughts on that. And I'd love to hear from the attendees too, you know, what their number one closing strategy is. Could be, you know, setting expectations, creating urgency, just like any of these pieces. Which is the most important to you?
This is about reviving deal deads, and wow, shocker, I'm going to go back to video. And basically, I'm going to talk about how when a lot of deals, obviously, at the beginning of the year died out, whatever, they said might have said reach back out in 6 to 8 months. And so this is a really good time. Well, you still got time. Should have started this weeks ago, but you still got time to do it. Send videos to people that are deal dead. Get them to like be like, at this time, this is typically right budgeting season, et cetera, like that. So now is the time for them to figure out what they want to do for Q1, even for the end of this year, because they have, to Gretchen's point, they got stuff that they need to get rid of. So it's a good time to make a video to those individuals to see like if you could possibly help or if you could provide a service or solution to them. So I like going back to deal deads to get them back on the calendar and then meet with them and then try to drive that sales cycle. Everything that everybody's saying in the chat, those are things as well. But if I had to give like a strategy, right, that's what I would say.
Really good. Yeah, I'd love continue to do the work and don't assume people won't buy because of the holidays. I think we heard the data here on this call that proves it wrong. So no, double down. Always have a highly qualified pipeline. That is totally a great answer, right? There's not a ton you can do if it's not, robust already. You always want to have multiple paths to hit your commit for the queue. So that's a good one for all time, right?
Yeah, those would be. I think like we're a huge fan of recycling, dead ops, whatever you want to call it. So making sure that you've got more than one place to source that pipeline from. And for us, like we're a volume business, so having recycling in play, working the video piece in, and then just staying super focused and trying to be a little creative. Because some of the things that you might find out work in Q4 by being a little more creative, working on a couple less deals, might carry through into the next year. So I think it's a good time to flex the creative muscle and make sure that you're working with things that have legs, for sure.
One last thing I would add that we didn't necessarily talk about, and I know everyone doesn't have the ability to do this, especially if you are inside sales. If you can get outside and be with your customer, and I know it's just tough in the time of COVID right now too, but if you have the opportunity, do it. That in-person interaction goes such a long way. I've definitely seen it accelerate deals. So make it happen if you can.
It's a great call.
Good call.
And it's fun.
And it's fun.
Yeah. True.
I love that. Well, thank you all. Before we wrap up, are there any final comments about just takeaways for people walking away from this? I think we've covered it, but I just want to make sure that we don't miss anything. Thank you all so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Thank you to everybody who attended. I got a lot of this too, not just from the panelists, but from all the feedback from the attendees here. Looks like we're all in for a really great queue.
Absolutely. There are so many great takeaways. I've learned a lot. I'm excited to see the promo clips that come out of this from all the great nuggets. So thank you all to everyone who attended, and thank you to our panelists who have taken the time to share their wisdom, their insight with us. So thank you all.